the drip tape I'm using just isn't doing a good enough job. I'm going to scrap it. I'm going to go back to overhead watering. So let me show you what I got set up here. Hey guys, welcome back to another slightly rednecked video. Again, my name's Chris, and if you're not familiar with this channel, I help you to produce your own meat, eggs, and vegetables from your backyard, your balcony, your deck, your garage, or even a spare room from your house if that's the way you want to do it. And like I said in the intro, the drip tape I've been using is just not doing a good enough job. So I went out and picked up a couple of overhead sprinklers. These are Orbit, I don't remember the exact model. I'll find it for you and probably leave it in the description below. But these are Orbit like landscape, sprinklers is what they are. They go in a circle. I'll show you how they work here in just a minute. But I picked these up and just mounted them to these T-posts. I've got 2 of them in the garden here, and it's enough to water the entire garden. Plus, I get a little bit of overspray on the sides. I'll show you that here in just a minute. But I think this is going to do a much better job. The drip tape I've been using, it gets good reviews. I've given it a really good chance. I tried it all year last year. It didn't work too well. I thought it was because I had it setting on top of the landscape fabric I've got down where my plants are planted through, and it wasn't soaking through. Neighbors' dogs are going crazy about something. But so this year I put it under the landscape fabric, thought it would do a much better job. But even when I'm running it for an hour and 2.5 or 2 hours at a time, it's just not getting water to all the plants. And I think it probably would work better if if you had just a single row of plants and you laid that stuff right down beside the plants. I think it would probably do a decent job. Drip irrigation is slow. You want to run it for a couple of hours at a time when you run it. But the way I've got my garden set up where I'm maximizing space and like here, let me show you. I've got my corn over here. Hopefully you can see that. Where I've got a bunch of it all together. I've only got 2 rows of drip tape running down through there. And maybe, let me see, let me adjust the camera a little bit here. I don't know if you can see it or not. Here, let me bring you in close. We'll take a look. Okay, maybe you can see this. I've got one drip tape running there, one right there, pretty much down the middle of the row. And it's just it doesn't get water to the entire row. It probably has something to do with my soil here. We've got pretty heavy clay soil, but I don't know, I've got good, compost right on top. You would think it would just spread out, but even after a couple hours of watering, it's not getting water to everything. Everything was starting to look pretty wilty and kind of dying off. And you can kind of see as you go down the row here, you've got a bunch of green beans sitting out there, and I did have the drip tape running right along the side of them. They seem to be doing good. But down there on the very end, I don't know if you can see that cage standing up down there. I've got cucumbers planted around there, and none of them germinated, even with the running the water. So I'm pretty sure it's an issue with the drip tapes, just not, and who knows, maybe it's my water pressure. I don't have the best water pressure around here. It has a pressure reducer on there so you don't blow it out. But anyway, I don't know, maybe that's the issue. A couple of other problems I've had with the drip tape is it's really, really fragile. It's easy to put holes in it. And if you put a hole in it, like I've got it underneath this stuff, and when I'm putting these cages on and stuff, sometimes I hit it. If you put a hole in it, well, then it just spews water out that hole and it doesn't work at all. So, I've got a hole down here. I'm not going to hook it up and run it, but there's a hole on one of these tomato plants down here. So when I would run this section here, it would just, blast water out that hole, and none of the rest of it would get water to it. So I'd have to rerun those whole lines anyway. I just gave up on it. I'm just done dealing with it. It's just not working well for me. If you've used it before and it's worked well for you, like I said, it gets great reviews. I see plenty of people online that are using it and having great success with it. Then go ahead and keep using it. But for me, I'm going back to overhead watering. Now, I've read plenty of times that overhead watering, wastewater, and I know that it's not nearly as efficient as drip watering, but if the drip irrigation's not working, not getting my plants watered, well, it's not doing me any good anyway. So I am going to waste a little bit of water with the overhead irrigation. I've also heard overhead watering can cause problems with like mildew and some of those kinds of problems. I've never had that issue, and I've overhead watered for years. My grandfather always watered his garden with sprinklers overhead, and never had problems with any of that. He had one of the best gardens I've ever seen. So in the way I figure it is, that's how God waters my plants anyway. Whenever the rain comes, and especially in the evening times, I tend to water in the evening times. I know you're not supposed to. I know that can lead to mildew problems and things like that. But again, that's when most of the time the rain comes. I've never had issues with mildew or any of those kinds of things on my plants. So I'm going back to the overhead watering. So let me show you this setup. It's pretty simple, really. Let me bring you in close and I'll show you how this sprinkler works. Okay, so like I said, this is an Orbit brand. It's got a, oh, I've got it on medium. I need to turn it to large. Maybe that was part of my problem. There we go. It's got a dial here where you turn it to large, medium, small, or I think there's a flat, a shower setting. I figured out the large setting works, and then you turn the top here to adjust the way it sprays, whether it shoots in a more of a straight line or more of a, you know, an angle kind of like this. And there's a dial on the back where you can set it to where it, you know, will turn only so far one way or the other. And I've got it turning the entire direction. I've got 2 of these, and that's enough to water my whole garden, but I do get a lot of overspray. When it goes this direction, it sprays over the fence, both sides. If I had 2 more of these, I think I could probably set them up on the edge of the garden where they would spray, you know, just one way, and they wouldn't spray over the edge of the fence. I wouldn't have nearly as much waste, but I've only got the 2 of them right now. I may change that up later, I don't know. When I did try, here, let me back this camera up so I can talk to you guys. Okay, so took a little bit of finagling to get this thing set up exactly where I wanted it. I first started off with mounting it on the fence over here on the edge, spraying this way. Actually, it was right here, spraying this way. And it would reach all the way across, but at the edges, it wasn't quite getting to the edges when it would go, hopefully this makes sense. When it would go this way, it wasn't quite getting all the way to that corner down there. And I could have moved it down one, but with only 2 sprinklers, it wasn't enough to, you know, if I only had it doing this, it wasn't enough to get the whole garden. So now I put them in the middle of the garden. This will reach all the way to the edge and this direction, and then the other one's set up down here. Let me turn the camera around, you'll see. So the other one's set up down here, and it will reach all the way. They overlap a little bit, which is good, and it will reach all the way back to the back, plus it oversprays over here where my raised beds are. Turn the camera so you can see those. All right, so I think you can probably see them now. They're behind me here. So it does overspray, but it reaches those raised beds, so it waters them at the same time it waters the rest of the garden. So, you know, it seems to be working pretty well. I ran it for about an hour earlier today. I'm going to go ahead and run it again here in just a little while. I'll show you guys. I'll turn it on and let you see how it works. But I'm pretty happy with these sprinklers. I've had problems before. I've used sprinklers, the kind that you set on the ground and they go up and down like this. I've used those before, and it's incredibly difficult. I don't have the best water pressure. So when I run 2 of them, they just don't cover the entire garden. So I end up having to run one and then run the other. I can run both of these at the same time, and it covers the entire garden. So waters everything. So that's great. You know, as far as plants are going, things for the most part are doing pretty well. I may have to replant some things. Let me show you real quick. Maybe you can see I've got 2 okra plants that broke over. We had a terrible windstorm come through the other day, about 50-mile-an-hour winds, just all night long, and it really did a beating on these plants. So, you know, it's a little bit late to be planting things. It's late June, mid-June, I should say. But we had such a late spring, maybe we'll have a late fall too, and a late frost, and maybe I can get away with it. So I don't know, I may go ahead and replant some things. But, you know, for the most part, everything else, whoops, bumped the camera. But for the most part, everything else is doing pretty well. You can see tomato plants right here. A couple of these that are smaller, like that one right there, is, that's one that I transplanted from the pot into the ground. These I had under milk jugs and had them planted really early, and boy, they've just taken off and they're doing really, really well. Turn you around here. Kind of the same thing with the paste tomatoes. This one's looking a little scraggly because, again, it wasn't getting any water. A couple of these are looking a little bit wilty right there, but I think they'll perk back up now that I've got the new watering system set up. All right, so this is where I've got it all hooked up, just my main hose coming in. I've got a splitter, enough I could do 2 more hoses on here if I wanted to, but I've got one hose running to one hose running to the other. I can turn this off if I want to and run just one, or I can run them both at the same time, and I'll probably be running both of them at the same time. So, you know, let's go ahead and get the water turned on. We'll show you how well these things are working. All right, hopefully you can kind of see that behind me. I may have to go to the other side and shoot it from the other angle, but you can see it's just putting water out. It's, as it goes around the other side, you may or may not be able to tell on video where it overshoots the fence there. So I am, you know, getting a little bit of waste. It's got some air in the lines, it's got to blow out, but for the most part, it's doing pretty well. Let me bring you down to this side, we'll show you. Okay, maybe you can tell, maybe you can't. You can see the water's laying down I mean, just about right, just past where my plants are. So I think it's working pretty well. So maybe you can see this, maybe you can't, but this one's coming around now, and it is overshooting the fence, but it's getting this raised bed. So it's laying water down. It's getting me right now too, but it actually feels pretty good. It's been hot out today. I need to move out of the way though. And I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but you know, it's spraying out past my garlic here, so it's getting this one watered as well. And it really doesn't overshoot the back fence too much, just a little bit. But for the most part, it's doing a pretty good job. So all in all, so far, I mean, I just installed them today, but so far, they seem to be doing a pretty good job. I'm pretty happy with them. They actually come with a 6-year warranty on them, so that's a pretty good deal. They were, I can't remember the model number. I got to go look it up for you guys, put it in the description, but they're the ones that said they shoot up to, I think it says covers up to 75 foot radius. Yeah, they're not quite putting out a 75-foot radius, but again, I don't have the best water pressure here, so that may be part of the problem. My water pressure may just not be as good as some of you guys are. But let's see, I'm checking here real quick. Yeah, I think this is going to be a much better setup. Everything's getting water now. I can tell, I can see it hitting the ground right. I mean, everything's getting covered. So I think it's going to work out much better than the drip tape. Like I said, you know, I'm not saying drip tape doesn't work. I mean, I got a couple of things working against me here. You know, the way I plant my garden, maximize space. I don't just plant in a single row. Again, I think it would work better if you just plant in a single row, lay that drip tape right along the edge of those plants. I think it'd probably work pretty well. The other thing working against me here is, again, my water pressure. Now, it does have a pressure reducer on the drip tape, but so I didn't try taking that off and just running my hose straight into it. It may put out too much pressure that way. I don't know. Maybe the pressure reducer with the water pressure I have is causing problems on it. We've also got really hard water here, so things like soaker hoses don't work. Don't work for me at all because they clog up. The hard water just clogs them up too much, and they just don't work. So I was really leery about using the drip tape to begin with, but I heard so many good reviews from it, and even people people that are fairly local to me on YouTube using it and talking about how well it worked for them. Living Traditions uses the drip tape, talks about how great it works for them. And so I thought, you know, they're not too far from me. They're pretty local to me. They have about the same kind of water as I do. So I thought, well, let's give it a try. And I've tried it now, second year, and plants are just starting to wilt. They're starting to look sickly. You know, just a clear sign that they're not getting enough water, even when I'm running this watering system, you know, for an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And so I'm giving up on it. I'm going back to overhead watering, just going to do it the way I've always done it before. So anyway, again, if drip tape's worked well for you, keep using it by all means, but we're switching up to the overhead watering. So I'm pretty happy with these sprinklers though. They do a lot better job than my previous sprinklers did. I am getting quite a bit of overspray, so it's really kind of waste. You know, I don't need to be watering the lawn out there, and that's what it's doing when it goes around. But I don't know, I guess that's the best, you know, least of two evils, I should say. Either not enough water for the plants or a little bit of waste. Again, I could probably fix that if I were to pick up a couple more. I think I could mount them on the fence over here, have them spraying just out in front and just cover kind of an arc and overlap just a little bit. And I think that would probably work pretty well, but I'd have to pick up 2 more of them. I think they were $17 a piece. It's not that expensive. And I'd have to pick up another couple of hoses to run to them. Of course, they wouldn't have to be very long hoses. So who knows, maybe I'll change that up. Maybe I'll do that at some point. But right now, this is working. It's getting my plants watered, so I'm happy with it. Anyway, short video today just to show you guys what I'm dealing with. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. As always, God bless.